Oh, wait, who's doing it? Is it me? I think it's me. Five,
Word vomit. That's
four,
what it is. Word
three,
vomit.
two, one. Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Michael Gray.
And I am Erin Green.
And
Hello.
Erin is loquacious.
I am loquacious.
She is so loquacious today.
Matt says that he has read that women have a certain number of words they have to get out in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if there are gender specifics on this, but that's what he's told me whenever he's like, okay, I know you have a lot of words to get out, but I need some downtime when I get home from work.
I have a certain number of words I have to get out too. It's 13. Then I'm good.
13 words,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No more, no less.
Nope.
I have a few words I have to get out.
Okay.
To our audience,
Oh,
I'm going to say thank you. Those are two very important words.
those are two important
Thank you
words.
for listening. We appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
We love when our audience interacts with, whether it's on Instagram or sends us an email, or I have conversations with people who are listeners in person and they're like, hey, you should do, a podcast on this, or you should address this in your podcast. We love it. And we also love those of you who are supporting this podcast, whether you've made, just little donation here and there, whether you're sharing it with a friend, whether you've left us a review on your podcasting platform. We love you. Thank you so much, because gosh, we've been doing this for a few years now. And, we've only run like a couple ads. We haven't gotten into the ad space. And I think that's, just because we like bringing you authentic content from just the two of us.
Just the two of us. Just the two of us.
Oh, yeah. You can sing.
I can.
It.
I did already. I just did. Quit being so
Okay.
loquacious. Jeez. I'm just going to use that word wrong the whole episode.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I'm loquacious. So I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. Yeah. So on that note, I think, we have like our little community, and we hear from people a lot about just how much they love the podcast. I was just talking to someone on Sunday, a buddy of mine. He's like, just listened to your last 3 episodes. They were telling me all the things that they pulled from it and stuff. And we love that there are people many of you who really enjoy this podcast. Like, it's something you look for. And we love that. And I've heard people tell me that when they listen to us, they feel like they're in the room with us, like they're a part of things. And we love that as well. However, Erin and I don't feel like we're in the room with you because it's just us. So just an encouragement. We do love all that feedback because it helps us step into the bigger thing that Middleish is, and just hear from you, interact with you guys. We really do enjoy that. And I love the community we've built. And I love what Erin and I get to do here together. But I think for a lot of people, it feels a little bit bigger than it does for us, just because we don't get that kind of direct interaction as often, with listeners. And so just an encouragement, like, we really do mean it. Like, we love to hear from you. We love to when people express opinions, and we get to have conversations around those, whether it's ideas of things we can cover or clarifications on things, whatever. We really do love to hear from you. It's very exciting for us to hear how something, for better or worse, has resonated with people, and how they may be applying it to their lives. So yeah, just echoing what you're saying, and and just a whole lot of words. Gosh, I'm so loquacious today.
Who's the loquacious one of the two of us? It's okay, because we have lots of content to share. It's all right. You have lots of content.
Lots of content.
Yes.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm
good.
Yeah, we're good. We're
All
just like, keep on keeping on, riding bikes. We went to a rodeo last weekend,
exciting.
which was super fun. Total Idaho country thing to do, taking me back to like my roots of being in a small town with all the world-class people watching.
Was it the Caldwell Night Rodeo?
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Um, really fun. Really, this summer we've pretty much stuck close to home and we've done like Idaho and Boise things. So our camping trips have been really close to home. We've, floated the river. We've gone to baseball games. We've, went to the rodeo. Like we've just done
Hmm.
very like easy Boise type things. And it's really fun. And I think it just reminds me that I don't need to do like really like big epic trips or things to be
Mm.
very content
Yeah.
and happy. So yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Mhm.
All right.
How's school going?
Good. We're on day two.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
girls started yesterday and had good days, and it's funny. I always forget how like tiring it is for them at first.
Mm,
The first week or two, especially Sophie, she's 6, almost 7. Like at that age, I think it's just so much energy into like, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to be? What is everyone's name? Who's my teacher? Like there's just so much that
yeah.
she was just wiped out yesterday. And then this morning I was like, I'm not getting up and I'm not going back. I'm too tired.
Which is funny to me
Yeah.
because I always think like kids are tired from all the summer activities, staying up late,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. But then I guess when school starts again, they have to get up at a certain time. And there is that overstimulation and this just
Yeah.
overwhelm of new environment, new kids, new
Mhm.
information. Yeah.
Yeah. And to get up and just like it's not like, oh, you can stay in your jammies till 10. It's like,
Yeah.
no, we got to go. We got to eat. We got to get out of the car. Yeah. So it's like hit the ground running. And
Yeah.
yeah, it takes them a little bit to adjust. Yeah. She was real tired last night,
They sure
but it
sleep
was good.
well when this
It was,
happens.
yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, no awake till 9. It's like 10 minutes and out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's good. They both had good days and seemed to like, teachers and classmates and all that stuff. So it's good.
Great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very good. So, our
So,
topic
our
for
topic
today.
for
I
today.
don't have a good segue, so we're just going to jump in.
What?
I know.
There's one
You
thing I've
always you
come to
always
know and
count
love
on
about you,
me.
Erin, is your
I am
adeptness.
the
Is that a word?
queen.
Adeptness at segues.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Aptitude,
I like
deftness,
adeptness.
maybe.
I like
Adeptness is all
adeptness.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we
It
can go
sounds
with
like a
that.
Michael word.
Yeah, I did not. I did not come up with a segue. So we're just going to jump in.
Here we go.
And
That's the segue.
I have actually this week. So Michael and I plan our podcasts, well in advance. This
Mhm.
was a topic we had planned, I think, like 3 months ago.
Yeah,
And just this
June, May.
week, I have had multiple conversations about this. And
Oh,
so
really? That's
yeah,
funny.
I'm really looking forward to diving into this. So, FOMO, otherwise known as the
FOMO.
fear of missing out. And I really have a theory that this overwhelm of FOMO that we are currently experiencing in society is causing us to miss out
Hmm.
because
Yeah,
there's other really important stuff going on when you're experiencing FOMO. You just
yeah,
have to look for it. So
yeah.
I think this is an important one.
Yeah, and when Aaron and I were when we came up with this idea and we're kind of talking through, how do we want to approach it? What do we want to, highlight that kind of stuff? I think what we came to is just like, there's so much opportunity to learn about things you're missing out on now with social media, right? Like there's so much awareness of what other people are doing and how they're doing it, and that kind of stuff. That there's more for us to feel like we're missing out on, or we're aware of more of it. But also, it really winds up. One of the main points we want to hit today is just this point of comparison. Is that when we start really bending to our fear of missing out, to our FOMO, what we're often doing is we're looking at what other people are doing and what we are not doing, and then designing our lives around that, to whether it's missing out on a thing with a specific group of people, or just something that is sort of popular at the moment. Like I think a lot about like popular diets, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever it is. I don't know. I don't even know what's popular right now. Is there a popular diet right now? There's something that's hitting hard.
Um,
I kind of
I
like that
still
I don't
see,
know.
I still see a lot on intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
I still see a lot of low carb. And I mean, people aren't calling it keto as much anymore, but I
Hmm.
still see a lot of this like avoidance of
Yeah.
carbohydrate kind
A
of
lot of
stuff.
anti-sugar stuff still, I guess.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
there's some pretty big traction in like those dichotomous, like vegan, vegetarian, whole food, plant-based stuff,
Hmm.
and then like the carnivore kinds of
Oh yeah, carnivore,
stuff.
that's true.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, those are kind of the trends I'm seeing. I haven't
Yeah.
seen like a new diet necessarily catch on, but I'm still seeing kind of those like, I'm waiting
Yeah.
for it. I'm ready.
There's some
Bring it
holdouts
on.
from things that cropped up a few years ago, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah. But things like that. I mean, if everyone's doing, if you hop on social media and you see three or four or five people talking about, I just saw something this morning about someone talking about ketones and like you see that stuff and then it kind of feels like, oh, this is a thing that people are doing, right? There's traction to it, like you said. And so maybe there's something to this. Maybe I should be a part of this too. All my friends are doing keto. All my friends are doing
Mm,
gluten-free. Everybody I know is, going low carb, whatever. Maybe I should too. Maybe I should be a part of this thing. And one, I think we're looking for answers to, problems that aren't answered in these ways. But at the same time, there is something that feels good about being a part of things that other people are doing, right?
yep.
But there's also danger there, and that's kind of what we want to talk about. How
Yeah.
FOMO can wind up, like Aaron said, it's the fear of missing out, but it can actually lead you to missing out.
Yep. And I'm glad you brought up like the diet space and, you know, how we have approached that. We've been conditioned our entire lives to want to lose weight, want to keep our bodies small or
Mm-hmm.
make our bodies smaller or achieve that thing that your body has never allowed you to do, which is usually tied to a certain size.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think there's a lot there where I work with people on releasing that pressure to be thin, to change your body, to,
Mm-hmm.
berate yourself for your eating habits. And I really help people like find intuitive eating practices and, really find peace with food. And I see this FOMO happening when people are going through this process. They're feeling really good. They're working on, embracing their bodies and being more relaxed and open around food. And then they get triggered or they see someone who, oh, I lost 30 pounds doing this thing,
Mm-hmm.
IF or whatever. And all of a sudden that
Yeah.
FOMO hits like, oh shit, I'm not engaging in weight loss. I'm
Right.
not even trying right now. So what the heck? I'm totally
Right.
missing the
What
bandwagon.
am I
Maybe
even
that's
doing? Yeah.
mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
so I think that can be really hard. And I have that conversation with people. And I try to preface our work with all my clients that engage in this that, don't be surprised if you work through a lot of these thoughts and feelings around body and food, and
Mm-hmm.
then they come back to you in
Yeah.
an unexpected way. And
Yeah.
so I think that FOMO really has a huge role in that because we're led to believe that you should always be striving for that or working on that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think too about like you're talking about, like, oh, I saw a friend who lost 20 pounds. And what's interesting, so we've talked before about like how, a lot of times we sort of outsource our success, right? Like we rely in external things, like whether it's, a coach or a program or, my fitness pal, like that's the thing that's going to get me to, we've talked about how that kind of falls apart. But I think a lot of times, in addition to outsourcing success, we wound up outsourcing just like our approach or our interests, right? Like we don't take internal stock of a lot of things and we go kind of to the world like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? You tell me, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what's popular right now? Oh, this diet's hitting. Okay, that's the thing I do. Well, I mean, we see that with everything, with, I mean, clothes and drinks and I mean Stanley Cups, like Stanley Cups blew up and everybody had to have a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think we wind up we shut down or continue to ignore. I think we probably a lot of us have already had it shut down, but just anything internal and unique and personal that might help us build a good individualized foundation for taking steps forward with our health. And we ignore all of that, and we allow the external, these things that we're hearing about that maybe we're missing out on, or wanting to be a part of, override that, and those things guide us. And I think this is one of the reasons why we see such like a continued colossal failure with fad diets, is because it is that, it's that overarching, very generalized, nothing specific to tailored to the individual, and you figure out how to fit in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to figure out how to fit in that. We're doing it backwards. We can take some data or information or approaches or whatever beliefs from those things and see how they apply to us and tweak them and adapt them so they fit in our lives. But if we're doing it the other way around, it doesn't work, because we're allowing our FOMO, right? Our fear of missing out, or wanting to be a part of something, to dictate how we're going to do very practical things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm thinking about like things where it's, like coaching programs I've talked to clients that have done before. It's like, yeah, I had to, I did an hour of exercise every day. It's like, okay, how many people is that going to work for practically? I mean, if you've got kids or a full-time job or both, probably not going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and or just really, really restricted diets or complicated, meal plan, whatever it is. I think this is one big way that this fear of missing out really winds up just kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, is because nothing is tailored to who we are and what we need. It's just this overarching generalized approach.
Yeah. And along those lines, I also think there's this belief that if I am not, if it doesn't work for me, somehow I'm broken or failing or wrong
Right.
in some way. And then that is a form of FOMO, because then you don't fit in with
Right.
what the messaging is telling you should
Right.
happen when you engage in these practices, and
Yeah.
you're not able to do it. So therefore, you're not good enough, or you're not
Right.
trying hard enough. And so I think there's a lot wrapped up in that whole FOMO mentality, where people feel like I should be able to fit it all in. I should be able to tolerate this amount of activity, or I should be able to, control my appetite, whatever. And when it's difficult, or when it doesn't fit in with your true self, there's this like, but why not? Like, what's wrong with me that it doesn't work for me? What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think you and I have talked enough about like really paying attention to what works for the individual and being true to yourself. For all of you listeners out there listening, I mean, go back through all of our episodes, and there will be some version of that throughout, is like paying attention to what works for you, and that moderation is on a sliding scale depending on the person. Like what's moderate for another person may not be moderate for another person. So I think all of this boils down to, you need to be honest with what works for you, and be acutely aware if there is some like comparison. We're going to talk about that today. There's some outsourcing of methods and things, or there's this belief that like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not succeeding if I can't do what everybody else is doing.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it paints a good point of how, and I don't know if this is like outright intentional with the fitness industry and diet industries, or if it's just like a nice little byproduct that they've
Side effect.
capitalized on, nice for them as far as, bottom line goes. But it's this weird cycle that we get in. Like you have the fear of missing out of this, so let's say just diet. Okay. New popular diet. And it doesn't go well for you, right? Because it doesn't fit your life. It's not an appropriate approach, all these things. But that's not the message we take away. The message we take away is, oh, I'm broken. I wasn't able to do it well enough. I didn't try hard enough. I don't care enough. it's like an abusive relationship, really.
Mm,
It's all the blame we wind up putting on ourselves. It's my fault. I know I'm not strong enough. I'm not disciplined enough. All these things that we wind up rehearsing to ourselves, which make us more desperate, right? Because I mean, every time we try something, it doesn't work out. We feel like more, just like emotional weight for it to, it's got to work the next time. We just feel more desperate and this kind of stuff. And so we're more open to the next thing that comes around. And we wind up just in this really just kind of downward spiral of really giving honest attempts. And then the feedback we get is your best isn't enough.
mm,
And figure out how to get better and then maybe come back to us and try again. Where I mean, I think anyone's best is enough. It's just we have to look at your specific individual situation and what is better for you, what are steps in the right direction versus having sort of these just like benchmarks out there, these goalposts that we're going to say are the same for everybody. And it just winds up leaving us feeling really frustrated and stuck. And again, like we're missing out because it worked for these two
mm-hmm.
friends. And so why didn't it work for me? Because of me. I'm the problem, obviously. And it
Yeah.
gets really ugly really quick.
Well, and this kind of brings us to the comparison conversation. And of course, that famous quote by Teddy Roosevelt, comparison is the thief of joy. I think that's exactly what you're describing is if somebody, finds um a flow with their life, with all of the things they have filled their life with. Maybe it's family time, maybe it's volunteer activities, maybe it's church, maybe it's, preparing for an event or a race or something like that. You've found these things to fill your time with, and presumably the things you're pursuing are bringing you some level of joy.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you tell yourself that the way you spend your time or the way you're applying yourself to other priorities then are, oh, that's not good enough because everybody else is doing these other priorities. Maybe I
Right.
should do that instead. You've just sucked the joy out of
Mm-hmm.
the things that you already determined were important to you.
Yeah.
And now because somebody else is doing something different, or because you saw a post where someone is spending their time differently, all of a sudden your joy is less. And
Right.
I think that's a really important
Mm-hmm.
take home for everybody to be aware of, because I think we're all guilty of it, especially in this
Sure.
world of social media. Like, it's out there. Everybody's highlight reel is at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just having a conversation. I bumped into a friend the other day who I know through the endurance community, and they were like, yeah, I'm kind of backing off some of these bigger workouts and long epic rides and things because of mental and physical health. Like, there's real
Mm-hmm.
reasons. And they had a really lovely, weekend at home, working in the yard, doing errands, like whatever. It was just, it felt really good. And then they opened up a social media app that's
Mm-hmm.
specifically for endurance sports,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden saw that everybody had gone and done these big rides and workouts and whatever. And whew, it just
Yeah.
deflated
Yeah.
everything. And I was like, but wait, you still had a great weekend. Like,
Right.
nothing changed
Yeah.
from the time you opened that app. But that's what we're faced with, is this constant comparison of, oh, what I'm seeing everybody else doing is bigger, better, more than what
Mm-hmm.
I am doing. And it
Yeah.
steals your joy. Don't let that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. You're exactly right. I can't tell you how many times as clients I've had similar situations where I felt like things were going so well. And then I talked to my sister, or, I saw the family reunion and this person was doing this, or, whatever. And it immediately, like you said, it like, it's like the wind out of your sails. Like, I'm doing so well. Look at them. Oh, I'm doing terribly,
Mm,
and everybody knows this, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's like, when we do this kind of comparison stuff, we are comparing so little that goes into any kind of outcome, right? Like, we're comparing so little. Like, let's say, two friends are doing keto. Okay. 3 months later, one of them's lost 10 pounds and the other one's lost two. So she's feeling whatever, frustrated. like all we're doing is comparing the approach, the thought behind how we'll lose weight, and then the outcome, not what your sleep was like, what did you actually eat, what was exercise like, what kind of stressors did you have in life as far as like in a relationship with your kids, work, extended family, any kind of travel. Like we just, I mean, your history, if you're 40 years old, the 40 years you've been here and all of the things you believe about yourself and your body and food, like there's untold number of things that go into how certain behaviors play out, but we act like none of those matter. And it's only, well, I was in keto for 14 days and so were
Mhm.
they, and we had different results and theirs was better. So I'm blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, that's not all that happened. A
Yeah,
million things happened in those 2
we
weeks.
tend to get like hyper focused on a very
Mm-hmm.
specific thing, right? Like
Kind of cherry
and
pick
I
it.
think, yeah, I think humans
Yeah.
really want to find an answer or
Mm-hmm.
like a reason, and we
Mm-hmm.
want to tell ourselves a story. And so I think that's very natural, but you're describing this very human experience of there's 1,000 things going on in your life that make you different from your
Yeah.
friend. And I think it's really important for you to zoom out and look at all of the possibilities instead of just pinning it on the one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, even, I mean, even things like, well, in those situations, if we think things like, well, it's just, I guess it's just harder for me. No, it's not harder for you. It's, it's not harder or easier for you. It's what it is for you. And
Yeah.
that's all that matters.
Different, maybe. It's
Different,
different.
but it's
Yeah.
different for every single person. So, I mean, we all kind of share that in common, so,
Yeah.
hey, look, we're all the same.
Yeah. And I think I've shared this on the pod before, but I had to really work through some comparison um I don't know what you'd call it, difficulties when I
Hmm.
was racing professionally, because I really would
Can
look at
imagine.
these other pro women who were just slaying it, and they were able to handle, 30-hour training weeks. They were able to,
Crazy.
travel and do like intensive training camps for weeks at a time. They were able to cherry pick races maybe across the world that would have a lighter field, and so they could get better results. Like there were all these things that I would just like I'd be faced with. And in my early days of racing professionally, I was eaten up by some of those things. Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I could be doing better. I should do this. I should do that. And I was shooting all over myself. Once I had to embrace the mantra, they are not me. Like,
Hmm.
she is not me. And just remind myself of that. And
Hmm.
through that, I was able to just really look at the whole, what do I have going on in my life that is
Hmm.
different, a different set of circumstances. I have a different history in sport that has brought me to this place. I have different stressors. I have different resources. I really, had some really great resources as well. So, like, really just embracing the whole situation that's unique to me, and
Yeah.
trying not to, like, it's great to listen and look to others. What are they doing that is helping them
Right.
achieve things that maybe are enticing to you and interesting to you? That kind of comparison
Hmm.
and observation and curiosity is probably super helpful. That's how we grow.
Hmm.
But if you're constantly looking at someone else and the message you are bringing back to yourself is, I can't do that. I'm doing something wrong. I'm not good enough. I don't have enough. You know, be very clear on how helpful this comparison is for you.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I think you need to proceed with caution because you're right. There, we can absolutely learn a lot that we can apply to ourselves, but it does depend on what of that we're comparing. Because if it's, well, they ate this much food for this many days, like if we're getting to nitty gritty like that, like, no, that's not what we're doing.
Mhm.
That's that kind of comparison where we're expecting where our bodies aren't mathematical equations, right? We can't say for them X plus Y equals Z. So for me, X plus Y will absolutely equal Z. No, it doesn't work out like that. But
Right.
how are they making things fit into their life? What sort of like strategies are they taking? And how can you apply those to you in your individual, personal, unique situation? What are the things that they are, reinforcing? How can I reinforce those things in a different way, but the same kind of thing. And so you got to be careful with it, like Aaron was saying, because there is kind of a, obviously there's a dark side. We're talking about that, but that comparison can be helpful. Like what are they doing? What they say, success leaves clues. What are what are the clues? What seems to be working for them, and how can I take that knowledge and apply it to my own life in a individual, specific, unique way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we do need to just be careful of how we're comparing things. But the thing
Yeah.
about comparison is like I, I don't think comparing and making decisions and strategies and plans off of comparison can really ever lead to like total health. And maybe it'll help you lose weight, which you feel healthier, that kind of stuff. But um, as far it shuts down your uniqueness. It shuts down
Yeah.
like knowing who I am and what I need and listening to my body and how do I feel like I can recover, and how do I like practice self-care? What are the things I need? Because they are not the same thing as what everybody else needs. And when we're trying to do them in sort of this just generalized way, we're not honoring our uniqueness. And I don't think we can be truly 360 degrees healthy and happy if we're not honoring that uniqueness. And how do I move into spaces of kindness and grace and care for myself in the ways that I need them? And we can't just like cookie cutter self-care. We can't
Yeah.
cookie cutter health. It just does not work that way. And when we're caught up in FOMO and comparison, we shut down all of those things that can lead us to deeper, healthier places internally for the sake of sameness.
I love that, the whole idea of leaning into your uniqueness, because
Yeah.
I think that along with that is that, internal look at what works for you when
Mhm.
you do feel that pang of missing out. And someone like, so I had a client that was feeling like she needed to go on every camping trip she was invited on with friends.
Mhm.
Like, and if she didn't go, she would be, sitting at home for the weekend going like, oh, how much fun they're having without me and all this stuff.
Right.
But she also was feeling completely drained,
Mhm.
disorganized, no food in the house, no clean laundry, like exhausted, whatever, needs to do chores and errands by the time Monday hit. And
Mhm.
so we had to like just really kind of talk about, and this came up in our discussion because when I work with clients, we talk a lot about like time management and being prepared for the week. And it really dovetails into the food
Mhm.
conversation, right? And so we had to talk about like, well, what is behind this? Do you really want to go camping? Like,
Yeah.
it's fine if you don't.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be up for every single trip or every single enthusiastic, you know, outing that you were invited on.
Right.
It's fun to be invited. It's fun to engage in those things, but only as they serve you. And
Mhm.
so I think that's another important thing is as you're becoming more comfortable with your own like uniqueness and how you approach the world, maybe it works for someone else to be on the go all the time. Some people, they can't
Yeah.
live without the hustle.
Mhm.
Personally, I need time to recharge. I need a little bit of space to manage things in my life so I feel like I can show up in different places with
Right.
all of me and not
Right.
just be like flying by the seat of my pants all the time.
Right.
So I think that's another important thing, just, as we're talking about this uniqueness, recognize like what your style is and what you need out of this hustle bustle life. And if FOMO is pulling you away from more important things.
Mhm. And recognizing that that won't always be the same thing, right? Like what I need now, maybe I do need to get out and be with friends and just be around people who love me and laugh and that kind of stuff. Maybe I do need to stay home tonight and just
Mm-hmm.
take in. And that can be different from time to time, day to day, week to week. And that's why I think it's, we talk about, we've talked about it here a lot, just like this willingness to just kind of try shit out, like be
Yep.
curious, see what happens, see what works. And I think when you can approach your health and just different tools with that curiosity and no pressure that this has to work, but let's see if it does. I think then we have a broader toolbox, a bigger toolbox with which to work with. And we also have different touch points with these things. So we kind of know how they help us, right? Like, in what ways does staying home by myself, having some alone time for a couple hours, how does that like resonate with me? How does that restore me? When I go out with friends and have a really good time and a drink and stay out kind of late and just, whatever, we'll go home when we go home. How does that restore me? And, when I get to spend time in the kitchen cooking, listening to music, how does that, like, what of these things is going to give me what I
Mm-hmm.
need? And I know what I need because I am not shutting down my uniqueness and my individuality for the sake of sameness. I have spent time understanding myself. And so I know how I can kind of plug and play. Like, today, I need this. Tomorrow, I need this. And I understand how those things work with me because I've spent time getting familiar with them, and I've spent time understanding what my own needs are and how those things resonate with me. And you don't get that if you're just chasing what someone else is doing. You will never get that if that's your approach.
Yes. Yes. And if you're worried about what other people think
Yeah.
based on your choices, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's another angle of all of this is, you know, we all have those, friend groups or volunteer groups or work outings or things that kind of have this undercurrent of expectation that, like, yeah,
Yeah.
you should be up for this, or oh, you're going to stay home, that's super lame, or you're not going to sign up for this event this year, like what
Mm-hmm.
better things do you have to do, like that kind of stuff. And I think that's another important
Yeah.
factor in all of this is like recentering on, well, quiet what you think other people, because you're not a mind reader either. So
Right.
what you think other people might care or say or think about your decision, that is beside the point. The point is for
Yeah.
you to actually observe like how things help you show up as the
Right.
best version of yourself. And I really think, as you're describing like all of these different options of that kind of plug and play
Mm-hmm.
approach of being curious, I think gratitude is another really important factor
Yeah.
because if you, let's say, open a social media app or you have a conversation with a friend and you get that pang of FOMO, like, oh, they did this big fun thing.
Yeah.
And all I did was, go to the park and throw the ball for my dog, or all I did was binge watch this thing on Netflix, or all I did was go, to the farmer's market and like go home and,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Like if you start doing that to yourself, like hit
Yeah.
pause on that you know, reel in your head and reframe it into gratitude.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that I could go, do this fun thing with my dog and bring them joy. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful that I have a farmer's market like right downtown that's really easy for me to access. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful that I have a welcoming little cozy nook on my couch that I can just crawl into and disappear into a Netflix series or whatever. So, like, try and find the gratitude in some of those things when you do start experiencing that FOMO. I think that will help like recenter your decision as, hey, this is actually a good
Yeah.
thing for me.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, you brought up just like, what are other people going to think? Like, as soon as we start making decisions or even letting that be a part of our decision making our process, I think we're on a quick track to just making a lot of, I wouldn't say unhealthy decisions, but potentially, I think we begin making decisions for the wrong reasons,
Mm-hmm.
because then we're trying to act and decide and be in a way that we think other people will be happy with, which, I mean, come on, where's the happiness there, right? Like, there's no joy in
Right.
trying just to
Right.
please other people. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
from a currently reforming, lifelong people pleaser. Okay, it doesn't work out so well. Okay, but it just, yeah, I mean, it's a really bad place to make decisions from on what would they want me to do, what would they think if I don't go, what would they, what am I
Mm-hmm.
gonna miss out on or not be a part of. And I think along with that, we don't have to like always, like your example of like, oh, my friends were out doing this and I was just throwing the ball from, what do you have to have the best thing all the time? Like, maybe you
Mm,
would have had more fun and you wish you could have been there, but that doesn't mean that what you did is like do we always have to do like, what is the best possible thing in this every exact moment? It's like, no, you did a thing. You got outside, you enjoyed it. You threw a ball for your dog. No, you didn't do that thing. But so does it always have to be the absolute best thing? Like,
Michael, you're in danger of creating a segue. You didn't even know it.
I did an accidental segue. We need like
This
a
is
little drop for accidental segue.
bing. Yeah, gold star for you, because this brings me to a post that I saw by one of my favorite authors. I've talked about him a million times on here, Brad Stulberg. I've said it wrong before, Stuhlberg. It's Brad Stulberg. I highly encourage you following him on Instagram or Twitter. Subscribe to The Growth Equation, his newsletter with Steve Magnus. He has several books. He made a post back in July that I've saved that I want to share, and he talks about dopamine culture. And I love that term because it's really like aligning with exactly what you were saying. Why do we always have to have the big exciting hit? Like, what is it about ordinary things that are not serving us and don't seem to have a purpose? So he talks about the symptoms of our dopamine culture, and I'm just going to read his bullet list. And I'll link this social media post in our show notes so you can go read it yourself. So, symptoms of dopamine culture. He says low level anxiety, constantly in a rush, lingering exhaustion, not always wanting to be on, but struggling to turn it off. That's a big one. How many of you can relate? Too busy, but also restless when faced with open time and space. Struggling to be content. And finally, we have feeling like you aren't enough. Wow. We have hit on several of those.
All great side effects.
Right? I mean, it really is like the commercial, the pharmaceutical commercial that's like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, blah, 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 blah. Like all of the side effects. Loquaciousness. I think, of that bullet list, I really like the one that like the low level anxiety, too busy, but also restless when faced with open time, not wanting to be on, but struggling to turn it off. Man, I feel all of those. I have been in those states numerous times. And I think with self-awareness toward that and just recognizing that, like, hey, I am a mover and a shaker. Like, I've always got something going on. I pack my schedule, but I also have learned that valuable downtime and creating space for me to just be. Like, I don't have to be on. I don't have to be plugged in. I don't have to be available to people. I can just be right now. It really does bring a new perspective of calm, being present, being able to really just give yourself space to think and process some stuff. And I think we're in this culture of like, everything is instant, right? Like, we all have smartphones. Anybody can contact you on a moment's notice. We have social media. And if it's more than 8 seconds long, people lose interest. Like, what is that? I mean, where are we? Where it has to be like, everything has to be like great, grand, bigger, better, and super quick.
Yeah. And then, I just had this thought, like, and then how does that play into our progress, like with our health? It absolutely plays into the fact that I don't give a shit about I ate an extra vegetable today. I only care about I've lost 20 pounds. And so there's no significance to like one foot in front of the other, because that's not big. There's no dopamine there. There's nothing worth celebrating because it's just mundane and ordinary, that's where everything lies, right? Like, the only way we do big things is being consistent with a lot of little things. And those things, just looking at like dopamine culture, is that what he called it?
Yep.
Dopamine culture. It's like, no wonder we struggle so much to celebrate day in, day out. Yeah, I did this for 5 days in a row or 2 weeks in a row or whatever, because there's no there's no grandness to it. It's not a big thing to put on social media and have people like, wow, it's amazing. Oh, it's so incredible. How'd you do that? Like no one asks, how did you go for a walk 3 days in a row? Or how did you eat
Right.
two vegetables every day, at dinner or whatever?
Right.
And so those things just kind of reinforces this feeling that those things just don't really have any value or
Hmm.
meaning because they're not the big thing. And so we always have to be chasing the big thing. So we have to go extreme. We have to go quick and rapid. And it all works against us so fast. And it kind of corrupts our whole foundation of any kind of real sustainable progress.
Yep. And brings us full circle back into like comparing
Mm-hmm.
if what we're doing is worthy of
Mm-hmm.
sharing, of
Right.
being, is somebody gonna like shower us with accolades because we
Right.
poked around in our garden or did yard work for the weekend, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Um, One of the other slides on this post with Brad Stolberg, he says, don't compare yourself to others, compare yourself to prior versions of yourself. And there's a caveat there because I think that there could also be a slippery slope of like constantly on this road of self improvement.
Sure.
It is a valiant goal, I think, to grow and to be open to um, creating improved versions of yourself. I also think that sometimes just showing up, like he talks about showing up well in your life, like whatever
Mm-hmm.
that means. You don't have to do anything big and grand to just
Right.
show up as a good spouse, a good friend, a good employee. Are you
Mm-hmm.
showing up well? Have I learned from my past and made productive changes? They don't have to be huge changes. They don't have to be like big, like gold star, Instagram worthy changes. They could just be, have you made an effort to learn from things in your past? Do I
Right.
sense an overall growth and progression? If not, how can I adjust? So just like asking yourself some very simple questions when you are feeling like, man, I need to be doing something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Start with something small. Start with a
Yeah.
few of those questions and see how they feel.
Yeah. And maybe ask yourself too, like, why do I need to, what is driving me to need to start with something bigger?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is that voice within me that's saying, no, these smaller things are not valuable, only the big thing. And
Yeah.
step out of that for just a second and try to look at it with just a little perspective. And I think you can see pretty quick, like, oh yeah, I'm doing things in a way, I'm prioritizing things in a way that is not benefiting me, that is only making this more difficult for me.
Mm-hmm. One of the last things I want to point to, and this is Brad talks about this in his post too, is about community
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that community supports us. He says community supports us when we soar and provides gravity when we fall. So it really helps us keep some perspective and
Mm-hmm.
balance. And personally, I have felt, a really great sense of community this year in offering my time and mentorship to young athletes. I've started coaching one of our local mountain bike teams. I've been
Nice.
really trying to put myself in that space of
Mm-hmm.
being around kids and young athletes a little more, just to offer up, my experiences
Mm-hmm.
and my expertise and my perspective. And it is so fulfilling for me. And it also helps kind of rein me in the sense that like I think I maybe need to be doing these bigger, I need to reach bigger audiences. I
Right.
need to be reaching nationwide audiences or whatever. Growing my social media following so I can get this message out to more kids. But if I'm in front of a group of 50 or 100 kids here locally in Boise, that's incredibly impactful. And meeting
Mm-hmm.
their parents and meeting their coaches and having conversations with them, um, I think that it has been like a really grounding and connective practice for me to just, how do I fit in with my community in a way that, is meaningful and
Mm-hmm.
is helping me feel restored and fulfilled.
Yeah. 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 And I'm glad you brought up that community piece because that's, yeah, something we hadn't touched on, but that's uh, a good community because I think there are those communities that could, reinforce the FOMO.
Sure.
Yeah. Or
Sure.
not respect your,
Yep.
needs or wants, pressure you to do, you've said no and they keep handing you. But when you find good community, it really, I mean, I'm thinking about like the closest friends I've had and just different communities I've had throughout my life. And the best ones have been ones that have pointed out really small successes, have celebrated real simple, mundane, ordinary things, have, helped me see different perspective of how one foot in front of the other, really gets us to where we want to go, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because the community it's real critical.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
So,
right.
um,
Anything else?
just to, yeah, I think the overarching message is don't let FOMO cause you to miss out because
Yeah.
there's a lot happening in your life right in front of you that's
Mhm.
probably very important and gratifying and helps you stay connected to others. So
Yeah.
don't lose sight of that.
Don't do it. Don't you dare do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Michael will threaten you.
I'm so threatening.
Yeah, you're so
Uh,
threatening.
do you have a meaning of the
Mm,
mundane? I have
I
one.
do.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You
No, it's
seem
okay.
okay.
No, I was just saying if you don't, I have one. But
I do have one. I have
okay.
one that happened just this morning and it was
Oh,
I knew the moment it happened. I was
like
like,
this is it.
"Oh, I'm totally yeah.
Like, oh,
I
finally something happened.
I know. I was running in my neighborhood just my normal loop and
Mhm.
I could hear a raptor, a hawk specifically, kind of screeching in one of the trees. And then I heard this once I listened a little more closely, there was another raptor in an adjacent tree across the street that was talking back to it.
Oh.
And I just had to stop and I was like, where is that? Because I'm really expecting this raptor to be like way up in the trees somewhere where I can't see
Mhm.
them. Nope. They were just sitting right there on the branch, like right above the street, like being nice and
Like
loud
real
so I could
close,
hear
huh?
them. Yes.
That's
And
awesome.
just talking to each other, having a conversation. And I mean, you don't always see that anyway. Um, oh, I'm trying to pause my vacuum. Sorry. It started up once. I wasn't expecting it. Hope you couldn't hear that because
I didn't hear anything. Like that.
um
Hold on, let me pause my vacuum.
anyway, yeah, so that was super cool. And just to, I mean, Matt and I have gotten really into birding and raptors, and just we think it's really cool. Super cool. Nature is just cool anyway, but
Yeah.
it was fun to witness that on my morning
Yeah,
run.
that's awesome.
Unexpected.
We're about that age where, we can start picking up bird watching. I think it's legal
I
now.
know. Hey, I'm digging it. Pickleball and bird watching.
Woo,
I'm
just
down.
settle in. For me,
What's
so
yours?
okay, I won't say I have a specific moment, but it was just my parents were in town last week and it was the girls' last week of school. And just having them, I've probably said this one before, but just having them in my house, right? Like just being here, nothing interesting or out of the ordinary, just like sitting at the dining room table or in the living room, not talking, them just being there, hearing them play with the girls upstairs, just those very sort of ordinary day-to-day things that they were a part of. It was just a lot of just kind of meaning in those pretty ordinary moments, just all throughout last week, which is super fun to have them here. So
I love
that's
that.
mine. Yeah.
That's great. And it ties right into, being present and being grateful for the
Mm-hmm.
small,
For what you
mundane
got.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
they have a lot of meaning.
All
So
right.
thanks everyone for
Thank you.
tuning
Thank
in,
you. All
and we'll catch you next month.
right. See ya.